All right, hello again. So this is just a little bonus video. I sort of said I would show some other methods to match skin tones from the Frankenfaces, the first Frankenfaces video. So if you remember way back then, it could have been a couple of minutes ago for you. We used the levels adjustment layer to adjust the skin tones, right, to match them a little bit more closely. And we went to RGB, and which is the brightness basically, and we dragged that slider a little bit so that the brightness would match. And then we went to the blue channel, which sounds like a new cable channel or online channel there, and we used the blue channel to get rid of some of the yellow and kind of skew it a little bit, the color, so that the skin tones match pretty well. And they match pretty well, but I wanted to show you another way to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off that levels adjustment by clicking on the eyeball, and we're going to do it a different way. So I'm going to click on the layer 1, the bottom layer, and then click on my adjustment layer button one more time, and I'm going to go to curves. So this time we're going to use curves to do it, probably two different ways. One kind of eyeballing again, and one kind of precision method that's kind of interesting. So what is curves? So curves, the difference between curves and levels is levels adjusts only 3 different points basically in your image. Or 3 values, let's put it that way. Your black point, I'm trying to zoom and have you guys see this. The black point, the midtones, and the white point, which is off screen here a little bit. So it's not as precise an adjustment. Curves, on the other hand, can do up to, I think, 14 different adjustments. So what you can do with curves is you could click inside of this curve palette, right? And I can click and drag, and if I'm in RGB again, so it works very similarly, but I'm in RGB. If I click on the curve and drag up, it gets brighter, and if I click on the curve and drag down, it gets darker. Why is that? Well, let me delete that point. If I delete that, hit delete, that deletes that point. So the curves is basically a plot of the input and the output values. I know it sounds complicated, but basically if this is a straight diagonal line, let me zoom in a little bit. If this is a straight diagonal line, then the input is the same as the output. So that means that every brightness in the image before the adjustment is the same as after. So you're not doing anything, right? If, however, I take the input and I increase the number, so now you can see on that point, I don't know if you guys can see that, it's very small. The input was 104 and the output is 148. This goes to 255, by the way. That means my input is darker than my output. Higher numbers are brighter on the RGB. So now it got brighter, right? Or if I go the other way, it gets darker, right? Now my input is 132 and my output is 102. So, but the difference between that and levels is I can put as many points on the curve as I want to. One thing that people will do, and you probably saw this in a video for Camera Raw or Lightroom or something, people will do what's called an S-curve, and that is built into Camera Raw and Lightroom. And what that does, that looks terrible, but what it does is increase the contrast. I did it a whole lot. I probably wouldn't do it that much, right? So it increases the contrast. The flatter this gets, the less contrast there is. The steeper it gets, the more contrast it gets. Yeah. So that is another thing you can do. You can do a lot of stuff with curves. A lot of Photoshop people and photographers use curves a lot. They're probably getting a little less use than they used to because we have other tools now. But it is still a useful tool. Okay. So I had some points on there. You can just click to add points. I can select them and then hit delete to get rid of them. So I'm back where I was, basically. All right, so now I've got an curves adjustment layer that's not doing anything. I'm going to turn back on that top layer. I still have my mask on from that previous or other video. Hopefully you have that. So what do we think? We think this has to go brighter, right? We said that before in the other video, I believe. So I'm going to grab this tool right here, which is the modifies the curve by clicking and dragging. I kind of like it. A little bit newer than the rest of this stuff. So I can click on that, and then I'm going to go right in the bridge of the nose, because that's kind of like the middle and values for this face thing we're doing. And I'm going to click and drag up. I could just click, and then I would get a point here. Let me do that again. I'm going to undo with Command Z. I could just click, and then it puts a point on the curve that matches that brightness. And if I go up, it gets brighter, and if I go down, it gets darker, right? But I can skip a step and just click and drag, and I drag up until it gets to the brightness that I want. So I'm eyeballing this, right? I'm just kind of saying, like, how bright should that be? I'm gonna go with that, right? So it added that point on the curve right there, and I drag up in the image with that tool, and it raises the curve. So it kind of helps you pick the color, or picks the value and adjust it at the same time. All right, so that is our brightness. Now we want to do the same adjustment we did before with levels, but we want to do it with the curves, but we can still go and do the blue channel again. So I'm going to go down to blue. And now you can see there's no points in the blue channel curve, and they even make it blue for you now, so it's nice and pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the same spot and drag up. If I drag down, you see it gets kind of more yellow. If I drag up, it gets magenta, which is kind of weird because we're adding blue, but so I'm going to drag up just a tiny bit until it looks about right to me. Somewhere around there. And again, and this is where a good monitor will help in a room with good lighting and things like that. But I dragged up just a little bit. I ended up with input 102, output 114 in the blue channel. And the RGB channel, which is brightness, I ended up with 148, output 164. Really, I only did a couple of adjustments there, but I didn't adjust. If this was levels, this would have been right in the middle. I would be adjusting here, but I kind of adjusted a little bit of the bright area on the RGB, and in the blue, what did I adjust? A little bit of the darker area. So it's more precision, I guess, than the definitely more precision than the levels. And I could add more points on this curve too, but I think that kind of got done what we wanted to do with that one. All right, so let's do this one more time, but this time with more precision, but more complication. It's a trade-off, right? Okay, so I'm gonna turn off that curves adjustment that we just did just by clicking on the eyeball. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a blank layer, and I'll show you why in a second. So I'm gonna go down, I'm still right on this layer 1, or I'm here, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna go down and click on new layer icon right there. It's a blank layer, right? And then what we're gonna do is go ahead and turn off the mask on the top layer. So remember to do that, you hold down Shift and click on it. That is so I can turn that off so I can sample that color or the color that I want to change. So what we're going to do basically is match the colors exactly from one layer to the next. It's a little bit tricky, but okay. So I'm going to go up here to the eyedropper tool. It looks just like an eyedropper. That's kind of convenient. Okay, there's the eyedropper tool. And I'm going to make sure that I'm sampling a pretty large area. So the eyedropper tool selects color. What it's going to do is if I click on anywhere in here, it's going to sample that color. You can see it kind of shows that color, and that becomes the foreground color right there. So I want to get a sample from kind of an average a little bit. So I'm going to go up here to where it says sample size, and it may say 1 by 1 or point sample, 3 by 3, 5 by 5. I'm going to do 11 by 11. Let's do 5 by 5 actually. That's probably big enough. The reason you don't want to do a point sample is say you clicked right on a mole or a freckle or something, then that's not really the color of her skin. So I'm going to say 5 by 5 is probably okay for this image. And then I'm going to click, I think I'm going to click right underneath her, on her right cheek. I'm going to try that. So I click, right? And then now I'm going to go down to that, I'm on that blank layer. So that put that color right there, right? I'm going to click on that blank layer that I made, and maybe I'll put that right above the bottom layer there so you can see it. It's right above that one. I'm going to choose my brush tool again. That's the B for brush. I'm going to go up here and adjust the hardness to 100% up here in the top right. That's why it doesn't fade out on the sides. It'll be a hard edge. And I'm going to paint over here, not where I'm doing the adjustment, because this is the area I'm adjusting. I'm going to paint, I can just paint right there. Whoops, yeah, that worked. And I've got to turn off this layer, sorry. So I turn off this layer with the eyeball. I did paint, but it was underneath that layer. There we go. So I painted up there. I basically painted the color of his face into this layer right there. All right. So now I'm gonna sample his face in the same spot, maybe his right cheek right about there. So I'm gonna select that layer to make sure I get the right layer selected, just to be a little more careful. And then I can hold down Option or Alt on the PC and click on his right cheek. And that looks about right. That looks like the color of his right cheek. And then I'm going to go back up to this layer with the swatch I just painted and paint with that color. Make sure you're on the right layer by clicking on it. And I'll just do that. Okay, so this is her cheek skin color. This is his cheek skin color. That's all we did was we sampled from both of their cheeks, and then it sounds like we're doing some sort of skin grafting. Or not. Or color grafting. Oh, or color grafting. I just invented that term. So here's her skin color and here's his. They're pretty different, right? Okay, so the next step we're gonna do is we are going to put in an adjustment layer above him. So let's actually sample these colors first and get some markers for that. So if I go under the eyedropper tool there, if you click and hold or you hit I on your keyboard, I want the color sampler tool. So what that does is it lets me sample multiple colors. So I'm gonna click here on her color, and you'll see in the info palette that it shows that color. If you don't see the info palette, you do need to go up to Window and then Info or F8 on this one and show that. So I can see that that's the color right there, 219, 160, 54. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on his color right there. Just click on that color. And that's why we kind of painted with this swatch so that we would get the exact right color. So what did we do? We actually sampled two colors. You can see them here in the info palette. Here's the first color. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. And so I can get both. Nope, can't do it. Sort of, almost. One more. There we go. So this is her color, which is 219 red, 160 green, and 154 blue. This is his color, 186 red, 124 green, and 101 blue. What we want to do is make this color, using the curves adjustment layer, what we're going to do is make this color match this color on his layer. I know, it's a little complicated. All right, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to click down below, or actually just leave this layer right here. And then I'm going to, I'm selected on this layer. I'm going to click on the black and white cookie thing again, the adjustment layer button. Click on that and go to curves. So there's our curves again. Right now that's not doing anything, but it's above this layer with the swatches and with his layer. So hopefully I have this in the right order. We'll find out here in a minute. Okay, so we've got a match. So now the interesting part is up here, it shows, since we're on this curves adjustment layer right there, I'm selected on it, right? I can click here as well. If you look up here in the info palette, it's got before and after. It's got 219, 160, see those all match. But now what we can do is we can go down and change those before and after so that this color number 2, matches color number 1. And hopefully that will match up our skin tone. So what I'm gonna do is while I'm on that curves adjustment layer, I'm going to use that tool again right here, this guy. I'm going to click on that, and that will help us add a point to our curve. And then all I'm going to do is go up and hold, and I'm going to hold some modifier keys. I'm going to do Option and Shift, or Command Shift, sorry. So I hold down Command Shift, which will be Control Shift on a PC. I'm going to click. And what did that do? It didn't put a point on our curve over here, but what it did was put a point on each color. So if I show you over here, I'm gonna zoom in again. I don't have a point on the brightness, but I have a point on each color. There's a red, there's the green, and there's the blue. So why did we do that? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna make the input and the output, we're gonna shift the input from one swatch to the other, basically. We're gonna make this side match this side. Right now it doesn't do anything because we haven't moved anything. Okay, I know this is getting a little bit complicated, but so right now I'm in the red channel. So over here it says The red channel in her color is 219, and his it's 186. That makes sense because the higher the number, the brighter it is, and she's got a little bit lighter skin. So we want to go over here. We want to make sure this guy is selected. If it's not, you can use plus and minus. I don't want to click on it because I might move it actually because I'm pretty clumsy. So I can use plus and minus on the keyboard to make sure I have that one selected. You know it's selected when it's solid. If I hit minus or plus, you can see it's shifting through the curves here. It's just a shortcut, but it's a way to select that point without doing anything to it. So I've got 186 and I want to make that 219. All I do is go down here where it says 186 and I type 219. Whoa, that's a little crazy, but I think we're okay. We'll see. Now I'm going to go to the blue or the green channel. Her green channel is 160, his is 124. I have the right selection there. I'm going to put in 160. Oh, okay, getting better. So you can see the input now is 124 on one side and 160 on the other. And then I'm going to go to the blue channel. And the blue channel right now, we want to make 101 into 154. So we go over here where it says 101 output, and we put 154. And you can hit enter for that. I'm zoomed in here. Okay, so that is it actually. So what I'm going to do now, if we got this right, so I can turn this layer off, the one with the swatches, and I can go back and turn on her layer again, and I can turn on the mask. And there we go. It seems a little bit pink to me, but it depends where you did that. So maybe I should have done that in a little different spot. We did it right around there. But so that his cheek now, if I turn it off, his cheek, that area that we sampled right there, matches exactly. It's the same exact color. So I could have picked somewhere on the nose, the bridge of the nose. That looks pretty good. It's a tiny, yeah, that's actually pretty good. It does match right there. I just don't know if it's working in some other places quite as well. But that is matching exactly that specific spot. You could do another spot. That would be, you can do another spot if you want to. You might get mixed results that way. But I think that is it. So I turn that on, So this curves adjustment layer has to be above his layer because it's doing adjustments. There's before and after, right? That is pretty good. If you wanted to restrict those adjustments, this layer mask is completely white, right? So if I wanted to only have it work in a certain area, and this is not what I would do on this one probably, but let's say I go in here and I'm going to hit X. Remember the X switches these two colors. And I'll get my brush and I will go into that mask. This is just showing you something. You don't have to do this. I probably wouldn't do it. And then I'm going to paint. And you can see when I paint black into that mask right there, then I'm hiding that adjustment. So if you wanted to just adjust a certain area, you could do it that way by adjusting using the layer mask, or the adjustment layer has its own layer mask, right? So I'm going to undo that because that messed it up. All right, I hope that wasn't too confusing. That is a little bit tricky, but yeah. I hope that helped a little bit with matching skin tones, and I will talk to you again later.